with Rachel V. Hill, taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of Joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel V. Hill.
Hey, everybody. Rachel V. Hill is on assignment today, so you're with James Merlott and Will Peterson for the next 20 minutes or so on Coffee Break. Rachel and Mace and Jake are all down at Empower Field getting the tour of the new stadium upgrades and trying a bunch of food. How did we get this gig, James, and they got that gig?
Yeah, talk about drawing the short straw, right? They're getting wined and dined, and we're doing coffee break. So let's go. I'm ready.
All right, sounds good. No, we're looking forward to their updates. Sure, Rachel will tell you all about it tomorrow, but love hanging out with everyone who watches Coffee Break every day. Let's start with this, James. Adam Schefter goes on ESPN's NFL Live yesterday and reiterates some of the stuff we already knew, that Bo Nix was always Sean Payton's target. They were so worried that they almost traded up for Bo Nix on draft night because they wanted to get him so badly. We're very thankful he fell to them at 12. We heard Sean Payton kind of troll the Vikings and say, hey, J.J. McCarthy was a smokescreen. I wanted Nix the whole time. And then Schefter concludes with the new information, which was this was always Bo Nix's job to lose. And after going 15 to 25, 125 yards, a touchdown, 3 carries, 17 yards, he's not losing this job. Adam didn't flat out say it, but everyone in Broncos country has a brain. Bo Nix will start week 1 in Seattle against the Seahawks. So I want your reaction to all that information I just threw at you. And the question we see at the bottom of our screen, was this QB competition a ruse the entire time?
Well, first of all, I think it's a little convenient to say, yeah, that was the guy we wanted all along. He, the 6th quarterback off the board, that was our guy. He was number 1. I just kind of roll my eyes at that. But, whatever. We'll just, to some extent, we'll never know. So it doesn't really matter. I do think, though, that Sean Payton fell in love with Bo Nix when they went up to Eugene. The way that he was able to process the information, that's what offensive-minded head coaches just love, is guys that are, coach on the field because of the way they can compute things and the way they can see things. So I think he liked that. I think this was always, was it a ruse, the quarterback competition? I'd say no, but it was going to be Bo Nix's job unless he just fell flat on his face. And look, that could have happened. It could have happened even on Sunday. I mean, Will, you love the butterfly effect. Imagine if that first pass he throws gets picked off. Who knows how things kind of go at that point. That can be a confidence killer. So, look, it went well. It was very encouraging. There are certainly some boxes still to check, throwing the ball downfield, work in the middle of the field other than just the dump-offs to Lucas Kroll. But for the most part, a lot of boxes were checked. So I think unless he fell flat on his face, it was going to be his job. Jarrett Stidham has always been an insurance policy, just in case Zach Wilson comes in and is, still the same guy he was in New York, just in case Bo Nix isn't ready. Broncos don't need their insurance policy. Jarrett Stidham's a distant third in my mind in this quarterback race.
All right, we'll get to Stidham in a moment, but let me give you a little pushback. You said that we'll never know. Well, what about Sean's comments at the Combine? And I'm paraphrasing, but he said, everyone else overanalyzes this, and we just know the guy we want, and luckily we're really good at this. And pretty much everyone thought he was talking about McCarthy. I think that's when the smokescreen was laid for McCarthy. But if we do take Sean at his word there, his word, because we know he has a couple lattes and says too much, his word was basically, we like one of these guys. No one else likes him as much as we do. And we're going to get him at 12. I think that's when we all kind of knew, oh, he's not going to make a big splash up for Jaden Daniels or a blockbuster package for Caleb Williams. We thought it was McCarthy, but it was Nick. So what if Sean was telling the truth at the Combine? This isn't as hard as we think it is, and he always wanted Nix, and Nix was circled even before they went to Eugene in March.
Maybe, but he could have been talking about McCarthy. He could have been talking about Michael Penix Jr. Nobody thought he'd go 9. Right? So they could have been just like, yeah, we're going to sit here at 12. And then when the Falcons make that selection, it's like, oh, crap, we better change. I mean, they're never going to come out. Nobody ever comes out after draft and like, we got our 3rd option. The other 2 were off the board. I mean, we liked him, but he was distant 3rd. Like, no, it's the guy we wanted all along. For sure, it worked out great. So Do I think they liked Bo Nix? Yeah, they wouldn't have taken him at 12 if they didn't. Do I think in February in Indianapolis, they knew that's who they were going to take? No, because they hadn't gone out and had the meeting in Eugene yet. So I think we're giving Sean Payton way too much credit with that narrative. We are drinking the Kool-Aid, taking the bullet points, and just, oh my God, he's playing chess and everybody else is playing checkers. No, I think they liked a couple of guys. They figured one of them's going to fall to him. Whichever one did, they would say, this was our guy all along. We loved him. Like, listen, if the Falcons had surprised everybody with Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. falls to the Broncos, we'd be hearing the exact same stuff right now.
All right, let's talk more about this competition, though. And you said you didn't think it was a ruse. I went into training camp. I was on the drive with Zach By, and I said 70% chance Stidham starts week 1, 30% Nix starts. I think I actually said 29% Nix, 1% Zach Wilson. Well, boy, would I like a mulligan on that, James, because I think it was more like 90% chance Bo Nix was going to start the whole time. I like what you said. Unless he fell flat on his face, this was his job. Schefter kind of backed that up yesterday, and then again said he's doing the opposite of falling on his face. He's winning the job. But I just think that we owe it to our audience and owe it to ourselves to remember where we were at a month ago. We all thought this maybe was a coin flip of who was going to start against the Seahawks. I'm just telling you, I'm revising what I said. I think that coin was heavily weighted towards Bo Nix.
Well, look, I don't necessarily think you were wrong with your percentages because I think there was actually a pretty good chance he did fall flat on his face early, right? Like, rookie quarterbacks struggle all the time. Rookie quarterbacks are overwhelmed by the situation and overwhelmed by the vernacular and the verbiage and the terminology and just everything going on. I think there was a better than 50-50 chance that was going to be the case early on. And it was more likely that, hey, week 5 against the Raiders or week 8 against the Panthers or whatever it is, that's probably when Bo will have it down and they'll be comfortable with him. Okay. So I don't really think you were off in your percentages. I think he had to fall flat on his face, and I think they kind of thought there was a pretty good chance that was going to happen, and it just didn't. So it's like, okay, if he's ready to go, then there's no time like the present. There's no reason to wait. So, things have changed because we got a chance to see if he could do it when the lights were on, and he did. Now, a week from now, let's say he goes out against the Packers and on the first play throws a pick, and then he fumbles the snap and the Broncos don't recover it. And we're talking about 2 turnovers from Bo Nix. We might have a different story. So we'll see. This thing is still evolving. It's still pretty fluid, but yeah, it's definitely Bo Nix's job to lose now more than ever.
All right, you mentioned Jarrett Stidham earlier in the show. Let's get to Stiddy now. It was my column today at denversports.com that his 15 minutes of fame are expiring. Hat tip to you for a little help on that headline. I thought Jarrett Stidham last week when he went to the podium and just bagged on Bo Nix for 90 seconds and talked about how when everything goes wrong, it's always Bo's fault, and Bo's going to fill up his belly, and Bo's going to buy him a nice bottle of wine, and Jarrett got his hair cut by Tom Brady, even though he's not allowed to do that anymore. I just thought that was a man who knew, I'm losing this job. I may never start in the NFL again. Many media members laughed it off, thought it was hilarious. I didn't think it was hilarious. I thought it was a smug guy who knows his clock is running out. And then the evidence on Sunday, he only gets 11 plays, only gets 2 series. Penalties and an interception where Samaje Perine decided to play volleyball with the football weren't his fault. But does Jarrett Stidham see the writing on the wall? And your thoughts on his presser last week and then my column this morning?
Yeah, I wasn't as bothered by it as you in terms of like, I don't know if he was smug because that's borderline like offensive, right? Not that you said it, but like if he really was smug, I can see why it offended you and rubbed you the wrong way. I took it as more of a guy that's a little lacking in self-awareness, like a little delusional. Like I think he really did think he was like other number 1 quarterbacks around the league that, hey, I'm going to play 11 plays, then I'm going to stand over here on the sideline and, hang out. Because when you'd catch him, when Channel 9 would catch him on the sidelines on Sunday, he looked like he thinks he's the man, right? Like he's Jordan Love in Green Bay. He's all these other starters who just, preseason games are a hoot. Maybe you play a series or 2, and then you grab your ball cap, put in the earpiece, and just chill out with the other stars. It's like, dude, you are not in that category. You're keeping the seat warm, whether it's for no weeks, right, till the regular season starts, 4 weeks, 8 weeks, a season at most. Yeah, to act like you're the guy was a little delusional in my mind.
All right, delusional, lacking self-awareness, smug, whatever word you want to pick. I actually do think we're on pretty similar pages here. But you mentioned something that I'm coming around with too, and I give you credit. You tweeted it on Sunday. I wrote it this morning. There's a role for Bo Nix, obviously. Everyone gets that. There's probably a role for Zach Wilson because he looks pretty good. He's the same age as Nix. He's a former number 2 overall pick. Why are you going to give up on that guy when you can just stash him and see what he becomes down the road? I don't think there's a role for Jarrett Stidham moving forward with this team. I think he's going to become a footnote, much like Case Keenum and Joe Flacco and Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock and Trevor Siemian, and frankly, to some extent, Russell Wilson in the search to replace Peyton Manning. Bo Nix is hopefully the future the next 10 to 12 years here. Jarrett Stidham, welcome to the footnote category. I'm not so sure he's on the 53 2 weeks from now.
I think he is, and this is a little bit of a convoluted explanation, so let me see if I can get through it somewhat simply. I think in a typical season, Jarrett Stidham is the classic backup quarterback, right? He's Gary Kubiak. He's kind of a coach with a helmet. He can go out there if somebody gets dinged at the end of the first half and you got a 10-point lead, he can keep the train on the tracks in the second half. If John Elway goes to the White House before a Monday night game in Washington, gets bad chipped beef and is sick and can't play, Gary Kubiak can go out there and play one game. Broncos never wanted to have to play 7 weeks in a row with Gary Kubiak. Unfortunately, they didn't have to. He's not suited for that. He was a classic backup quarterback. I don't think this year it's that way because, one, Bo Nix is going to probably have some struggles. You may have to, go some stretches where it's like, hey, it's time to sit him down. Or the other thing is, heaven forbid, let's say Bo Nix starts the first 8 games and gets hurt and he's out for the year. What is the point of playing 9 games with Jarrett Stidham? You'd be much better off when you have a guy like Zach Wilson who could be an asset, could be a commodity, number 2 overall pick for a reason. He's got a ton of talent. You'd be much better off spending the last 9 weeks of the year, seeing if you can football rehab that guy. And that gives you one of 2 good problems to have or good situations. One, you end up with oh my gosh, what do we do next year? Do we go back to Bo or is it Zach? I don't think that would happen. Bo's the guy, but in theory, it's on the table. Or 2, and this is the most likely, you have a guy that was the number 2 overall pick. Sean Payton fixed him, and now you have a trade asset. And you have Jarrett Stidham here to be the backup quarterback in 25. I think he's the 3rd guy in 24, and he's just there that, let's say, again, with my hypothetical, Bo's out the last 9 weeks of the year. Jarrett Stidham's backing up Zach Wilson at that point.
Yeah, but can't you just go sign a journeyman backup at that point? The season's shot anyways. I mean, you are wasting a valuable roster spot. You were on the line of thinking, it sounds like, but correct me if I'm wrong, that they're going to keep 3 QBs on the 53. I know Sean has said that's a possibility, but he hasn't assured it by any stretch. I think keeping Jarrett Stidham would be a waste of a roster spot because if something happens to Bo or something happens to Zach, I don't know, you call Blaine Gabbert. I'm not sure if he's on a roster. You call Trevor Siemian. I'm not, but my point is Jarrett Stidham's just a guy. There are 10 to 12 just a guys out there who are waiting for a job, haven't announced any sort of retirement, and you can save $5 million by cutting Jarrett Stidham too. Don't forget that.
Well, and $7 million against the cap. He's going to have to redo that deal if he's going to be here. I think the question of whether he's on the 53, I think it comes down to this. Do you see him as your backup long-term for Bo Nix, 25, 26, 27, right? Is he Gary Kubiak to John Elway down the road? Not this year, right? Gary Kubiak was a rookie the same year as John. He wasn't his backup that first year. It was Steve DeBerg. Steve played quite a bit. And then they traded him to Tampa. I see Zach Wilson as kind of Steve DeBerg here. DeBerg came in from San Francisco. Then he gets supplanted by this first-round pick, and they wound up moving him. But he was a guy that, could actually play extended periods of time, a number of games that first year. So, look, if you think Jarrett Stidham's your backup for the next 5 years, when Bo Nix is firmly entrenched as he is the guy, and you know it, you keep him. If you don't, you're right. You can just go get a journeyman at any point. You can bring somebody in next year to compete to be his backup. There's a lot of those guys out there.
All right, we'll keep a close eye on it. Obviously, seeing how this QB competition shakes out. Even though we feel like we're almost at the finish line, until it's official, it's not official. Hopefully, Sean We'll announce that next Monday or Tuesday after the Packers game. Let's go over to the college football game, talk a little Buffs to wrap the show. Mike Hill, Fox Sports. You remember Mike Hill, the Big Noon Saturday host, right? We got to see a couple Big Noon games last year. He goes ahead and puts the Buffs at 25 in his AP poll. They're one vote, top 5, a lot of Georgia, a lot of Ohio State, Texas, Bama, the usual suspects, James. Were you surprised, though, that the Buffs only get one lousy vote in the AP poll, and it's 25th from a guy who probably got pretty darn good access to that program last year?
I'm not surprised. I mean, they're coming off a 4-8 season, and they started 3-0, right? So they went 1-8 in their final 9 games, including blowing a 29-0 halftime lead to a mediocre at best Stanford team at Folsom Field. So, no, there's plenty of reasons to question them. And look, it wouldn't shock me if the Buffs were 3-9 this year, and it wouldn't shock me if they were in the playoff, right? Their roster has changed so much, and with the portal and all the rest of this, it's like we have no idea. So I think most of the media members are being conservative and going off of what they know, and what they know is that Buffs went 1-8 in their last 9 games last year, and there's reasons to question Deion Sanders, Pat Shurmur, like, what's this going to be? And then there's one guy that's like, yeah, I'm gonna fire my shot. If he's wrong, nobody cares. If he's right, he can be the guy that said, hey, I told you the Buffs were going to be good. I had them in the top 25 to start the year. So it's a no. That's what I would do if I had a vote. I also think there's a part of it here. Deion hasn't been making a lot of media friends. This is a media vote. I think it's a little bit of a message of like, hey, we ain't giving this guy any benefit of the doubt. And I've been a big Deion fan. What he's done for that program already, even though they were 4-8, is borderline miraculous. But his performance at his press conference on Friday was unacceptable. That's not being a professional. That's not representing the program in a classy way. That's that stuff. Rick George needs to put a stop to that nonsense.
Well, yeah, it's interesting you bring up the presser on Friday, and could this have been a motivation? I mean, I don't know when ballots were due, but my gut, if you're releasing the poll on Monday, probably some point over the weekend. Deion went viral for all the wrong reasons on Friday. And James, he was picking on guys we all know. I mean, I interned with Eric Christensen at CBS 4 14 years ago. Eric's a friend. Eric's a good guy. I thought Eric's response was great. He's like, dude, I'm CBS in Denver. I don't have anything to do with CBS and National. He went after Arnie Stapleton. I mean, anyone who's met Arnie Stapleton knows he's like the nicest guy on earth. And you can have your opinion of Sean Keeler, but Sean Keeler's a columnist. That's what he's paid to do. And he still went and asked the questions, and Deion still went after him. I don't know who else he went after, but those were 3 guys that I all know. I like them. I think they all do their job well. And for whatever reason, this wasn't him going after Ed Warder. And I like Ed too, but Ed's a national guy. I mean, he was going after guys like you and I, just local guys. It just turned me off, and I'm with you. I've been a huge Deion fan, but he's not doing himself any favors when he goes up there and acts like that. No,
not at all. You're not going to win over that group, and you're not going to prevent them from saying those things. Now they're just going to be more likely to say it. It's the old, flies with honey or instead of vinegar or whatever, right? Like, it just didn't make a lot of sense strategically. It also was just Charmin soft. It's just like, you're that thin-skinned that anybody says anything negative about your program. The biggest issue, Will, and there's been this nepotism question. And look, his son is the quarterback. He's also has a chance to be the number 1 overall pick. He ain't playing because his last name is Sanders. He's playing because he's really, really talented. But Deion, because a lot of it was connected to the Shiloh story, Deion went up there at that press conference and acted more like a dad than a head coach. And you have to be able to separate the two. In that instance, that day, you're the head football coach at the University of Colorado. You're not Shiloh Sanders' dad. And he let the two get blended. And it was not a good look for him. It was not a good look for the university.
Well, you're talking about, was it flies or bees with honey and vinegar?
Something like that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm screwing up the saying. And why would you want to attract flies, though?
Don't soar like a turkey if you fly with eagles or something. I mean, you got all the animal analogies. All right, last one for you, super quick. It's 5.5. It's the most polarizing question in the country right now when it comes to college football. Over under 5.5 for the Buffs this year.
Over. They're going to a bowl game.
I think it'd be a big failure if they don't.
Big time.
Deion has said time and again, I'm staying. Well, if he goes 3-9 and those 3 guys all go to the league, are we sure he's staying? I don't know. We'll see.
We'll know after the first 3 games. right? It's North Dakota State. It's in Lincoln. It's at CSU. None of those are cupcakes based on, a really good, D2, right, with North Dakota State, and then two places that are going to just be ready for the Buffs when they roll in, Lincoln and Fort Collins. I mean, the Rams fans have to find the stadium, but once they do, I'm sure they'll be fired up. So, we'll know after those first 3 games.
A shot at CSU on the way out the door. All right, Rachel will be back tomorrow, tell you about her big food adventures over at Empower Field at Mile High. Can't wait to tune into that. For Trey and James, I'm Will. Thanks for tuning into Coffee Break. We'll see you tomorrow.